to Gold and Black Live. Dr. Will Miller, Kyle Charters join me, and we're looking forward to, you're going to lighten the mood in here.
I look shorter between you two guys, and I used to be taller. So.
Well, I just grew to be 6'9", and Kyle's 6'5".
I'm just now realizing I'm not even sure why I'm on this segment.
Yeah.
What are we,
Well,
what are we talking about?
I've asked for your
You're
presence.
going to ask some real questions to we bring in Will about once every year, and it seems to be typically when the Boilermakers are on a 5 or 6 game or some kind of losing
It's a
skid.
skid. It's a skid issue.
Yeah, it is a skid issue. Trying to put the brakes on that, I guess, if you're a Purdue football fan. We talked about we've talked about all kinds of issues off the air, but fans are in a situation where it's interesting how they project their worth onto how their teams do. And why does that? Why is that such becoming more and more of a normal thing in the world of American sport?
I think you're talking about with college athletics in particular, maybe also pros. Maybe you have different constituencies, right? In other words, there are lifelong Purdue Boilermaker, all-in Boilermaker fans, and they take the long view. And I think they have a perspective of, okay, we've had coaching changes, whatever, and they have more of this long-term view. And then you have people maybe who take a more seasonal view, and they're paying for their tickets and they get frustrated. And then you have just flat out ignorance. You just have people who just, in other words, they don't, as much information as is available to them, say through Gold and Black, reading about the analysis of what's going on with a culture change, a coaching change, a style change, etc. And one of the things that's different with college sports, I think, than pro sports is the analysis, the sports analysis, the journalistic analysis of sports is always a little bit more candid without worrying about contributing. Do you know what I mean? If you're in the Jacksonville Jaguars right now, everyone knows what's going on. Indianapolis, think about Andrew Luck coming in, et cetera. With college, there's always this fantasy because you're talking about donations, you're talking about support for the university, et cetera. It's a more psychologically complicated situation. The other thing I have to say is, and as much as people should know this, think about the difference when you're 18 years old going into college and who you are and what you are at 21 or 22 when you got out. The developmental change psychologically in that age group is staggering. And that's what these coaches and staffs are dealing with is cultivating character growth and confidence growth across a very volatile age group, right?
Yeah.
Think about it. We know when you were 18, you were very much like you are now, but you were unusual. I think.
Thank you.
He was locked up when he was 18. So.
I always like when I get that look like, what's wrong with you and why are you talking to me?
Yeah, no doubt.
What I like is the fan who treats a single play, a single turnover like it's World War III.
Exactly
And just
right.
has gone off the complete deep end.
The other thing too is
Is that childhood issues? What's the issue there?
Oh, there's definitely inner child stuff going on. But the thing about what demoralizes people in the stands, I think, is when it's a total blowout. But the fact of the matter is, and this is your purview more than mine, once someone's running away from you, once it's 3 or 4 touchdowns, and then psychologically you say, well, that's it. It's really hard, I think, to turn that around psychologically. I don't know what the coaches do, but I'm surprised they live past the age of 50, coaches, seriously, with the ulcers and the cholesterol and all of that.
The paycheck helps, though. Can money really? In that situation, can money change the way you look at it? And I'm not calling Daryl Hazel. I'm saying Daryl Hazel's working hard, and we're not saying that.
No, and he has confidence. That's right.
Does that buffer any of this? Does it make you feel a little better?
More than that, I think it's that the salary that's offered is a sign of respect that we have confidence that you can turn this around, and in fact, we know it's not going to happen in 1 year or 2 years. Anyone who is rational understands that, although, as you said earlier in the earlier segment, there could be some discouragement that they're not, as Brian said, not more competitive, for example. But, does anyone really believe that they were supposed to have a great year, that he would come in and turn it around with talent that's not his and a system that's not his? You're not dealing in reality. There's something in psychology called reality testing. And reality testing is a core psychological skill that means you really are looking at things and you understand what's real. And people who don't have that, we treat them. And so you're dealing with that. You're dealing with fans.
Yeah. But stress on coaches, how is it different between a Daryl Hazel at 50 and a Danny Etling at 18. I mean, is Danny Etling too young to I mean,
Well, let's talk
outside
about-
the physical stress he deals with?
To tell you the truth, the variable in each of them with stress is, here's an axiom in psychology. None of us has the capacity to deal with overbearing stress on our own singularly. Okay, we just don't have the tools to do it. Now, some people are natively more resilient than others, and they do a little bit better job, but it will crush any individual person. The variable that helps is the support of people around you. You know, there's an axiom in psychology also that willpower or self-regulation is a depleting resource. In other words, you only have so much with your own willpower. What fills in is when you are surrounded. So for Danny Etling, for example, people are telling him the truth, I'm sure. Look, we know it's hard. We know it's a learning curve. No one is expecting you to do anything other than your best. And, you know, try not to get hurt, obviously. That would be really helpful. But I have great... He's fun to watch. As a fan, I love watching... That sounds bad. I love to watch this team. I love watching the evolution of this team because I'm going to be full of thrill when next year and the year after Coach Hazel's vision comes true, and I have confidence that it will.
Joey Elliott wrote like an open letter for Huddle Pass sometime this week, where he sort of wrote to Danny Etling about the stress that he endured in 2009. And I don't think that team was competitive, and Twitter wasn't quite as harsh back then as it is now. So.
And
he
it's
just
like
talked about the stress that he faced back
Right.
then and the stress that probably Etling is under
And then
now.
pile on with the schedule. I mean,
Yeah.
Ohio State and Nebraska and all of that. So I have confidence, but the key to them coping, coaches and players, is to be surrounded by people who are continuing to give them encouragement and saying we're on a path, we're turning this around, and it's not that the fan opinion is irrelevant. But to tell you the truth, I think they really have to kind of huddle within themselves, cordon themselves off, and talk to each other. Or I'll talk to them.
What's your hourly rate?
I would do it for free, really.
All right, that could be
do it
that
for
could be a
free.
recruiting violation. We'll get some of that old the NCAA violation. All right, but what about the ones that social media, and you throw all that into the factor, and you talk about being able to basically huddle and build this cocoon, but it is. These 18, 19-year-olds especially kind of like that Twitter thing where they do follow it and they're going to hear what people have to say.
Everyone on Twitter's nice, though, aren't they?
Well, the people who I follow, who follow me on Twitter are always very nice because I keep my expectations low about what I expect them to say. They also fear that I will analyze them in return. But one of the things that's true is I think Facebook is kind of there's less and less Facebook stuff, more and more Twitter, and it's so short and terse and truncated. I think you're just talking about, John. There was a comment one time that said, there are a lot of people who have opinions, but sometimes we pay too much attention to them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And not paying attention to people is, I think, a really helpful guide. Actually,
The way hard lesson for 18 and 19-year-olds especially to learn,
Absolutely,
I think, in the front end.
absolutely.
So.
But I'm guessing that Danny Etling and those other young kids are hearing confident, incisive, real, focused input on what matters and how they're going to do and what doesn't matter.
Okay. Well, we've asked you to do this on all, and this is probably the most thrilling thing that even Matt Painter and Danny Hope and on down the line in the past have had to endure. But we always ask you to analyze the coach just by what he looks like and his demeanor. Daryl Hazel, would you like to have him for dinner?
Oh, absolutely. The best story I heard, did you already tell the story about when he was up in Delphi for the elementary school?
I don't know if we did on this show, but go ahead.
Yeah, he was up visiting an elementary school, the first, second, third graders. And he was really overtaken by how warm the response was. And he said to the principal, wow, I was really surprised they knew who I was. And the principal said, that's because they think you're Barack Obama.
Yeah.
And I think he's self-effacing. I think he knows. He's been in a big-time program at Ohio State for a lot of years. He knows the culture of successful, super successful, and then going into a little MAC program or a smaller MAC program and turning that around. I don't think he has any illusions of what he was coming in for. I think he knows what's going on. I'd like to believe he was ready for it. He's a person of great character. I love the guy. I'm a real fan. I think he's really going to turn it around.
He hasn't changed much from week 1 to whatever, we're in week 9, week 8 now, despite the losing, right?
Well, you guys see him up close and more personally, and you know, there's sort of a game face that people will have for the media, and then there's kind of what you see off camera and off screen, and I think he's pretty. Now, when I saw him, he slapped me, but that was a whole other thing. You know.
People tend to do that anyway.
Exactly.
They want
yeah.
to from
It's
that
displaced rage, actually. But no, I think he's a solid character. I also think he has really good people around him. And again, I can't stress that enough. What helps you cope? Stress is not the issue. It's coping with the stress. And what helps you cope with the stress, in addition to the own resilience of how you're made up, is the company that surrounds you and how they support and buttress you.
Yeah. Is there do you look at guys like that, and guys that get to positions like that, head coaches, you know, from Nick Saban to Darrell Hazel, that get to that level of competence? What separates them, though? Is it that ability to move forward in times of coping and dealing with stress? I mean, what allows them to focus? What's in them that allows that to happen?
Well, first of all, I think success feeds on itself. For example, a coach that really has made their bones and is already super successful. I mean, do I have to tell you the impact that has on recruiting? Yeah. I mean, my heavens. I mean, that's a lot of what you're talking about. Think about Coach Hazel. And part of what he's trying to turn around is a perception in kitchens of sophomores, juniors, and seniors in high school and their parents about, I'm trying to persuade you that I'm going to step up to become a Nick Saban. You know, that's who we're on our way to become. You know, that's a whole different kettle of fish when Nick Saban's walking, or his staff is walking into your kitchen. I mean, you know, the 5-star recruits pay attention to that. They know who's already there, and I can be part of what's already there. How do you turn that around from scratch? Again, you're talking about 17-year-olds and their parents, and you know, think about the vagaries of their parents.
Yeah. That may be part of the problem.
Yeah, absolutely it is. You know, reality testing. My son is going into the NFL. Well, it's kind of like what we say in psychology. It's like, you know, most parents in the modern age tell their kids how special they are, and it's up to other forces when they graduate to say, you're not special. I mean, you think you're special, and I think you can become special, but you're not special until you do something special. And so you're talking about parents who have dreams and fantasies about the success and the inevitability of the success of their obviously gifted young athlete, but then projecting forward. How many students who come through a big-time program, even at an Ohio State or in Alabama, what percentage, how many actually get to have a successful pro career? You're still talking about a small percentage of people. So you're talking about reality testing, and there's not a lot of that available today in sports.
Locker room culture has been a talk this week a lot with the whole Richie Incognito deal. Are you surprised that there's not more feuds like that come out, considering you're putting 100 in college football, 100 different personalities in a small space, and asking those guys to interact together, and they come from different backgrounds, and obviously it sort of exploded in a pretty bad fashion down in Miami.
You know, it's the balance that any program has of trying to infuse passion and mania, but then contain it to where it has to be contained and not have it spill over. And you know, you're talking about people probably with who have this great athletic ability, an ability to focus it in the game. We all know athletes. You think about great athletes who come across, when you see them interviewed, as kind of kind and civil and, you know, composed and contained, who then get out on the field and can like unleash it. And not everyone is able to kind of contain that.
Yeah.
Who's the young person you were talking about, the basketball player, who's he sounds like he has some mania.
Bryson Scott.
Some mania. He sounds like he's when I was a comedian, you know, Robin Williams would come into the club, and he was the same off stage as on stage. He was manic.
Yeah.
He just wasn't off. And mostly the comedians would go, you know, you're really off stage now. It's really okay to just have a conversation and a cup of coffee with us. But, you know, you get a guy like Incognito who just can't seem to turn that off, and that testosterone is just completely out of control. I think it's chemical with him.
Yeah.
He needs a shot. Yes.
You feel free to do that.
Yeah.
We'll stay away.
No. I would have to have him anesthetized before I gave him a shot with a blowgun. And then, yeah.
That guy, you'll be watching number 12, Bryson Scott, who is who we were talking about, but a very, very competitive guy.
What's really cool, though, on this subject, however, is what athletics has done in creating interracial civility. I mean, I know sometimes it goes awry, but you know, and of course this time it really went awry with that because that was a big part of this. But anyone who's been around an athletic program, college or pros, understands that those kids, even if they come from, say, a real homogeneous background of white or black or whatever, they learn to become brothers and sisters in that. And I think that's one of the healthiest things, because going forward, when their athletic career is done, and they're 30 and they're 40 and they're 50, they become people who demonstrate you know, not judging people by those demeaning categories, but by understanding the value of people. I think it's a real healthy thing.
All right, for those of you out there, you can tweet it to Will Miller at Dr. Will Miller. That's right.
Nice things only.
Nice things only.
Well, I will just expel you.
You can also visit him at University,
But, you know,
University Church as
Yes,
well.
yeah. When I'm on Bob and Tom, I'm used to getting misdirected rage.
Those guys have an ability to do that. All right, so it will get better then for Purdue football?
I consider myself part of the constituency that looks at the long-term loyal perspective of Purdue athletics. I think it was a great hire. I have a really good vibe about Coach Hazel. I think he's terrific. He needs to be given a chance to have 3 or 4 years of his recruiting coming in before we can ever say anything about, you know, how we're doing.
All right, on that note, we're going to jettison you. I don't know, not real far. We don't have an ejection seat here. We're going to bring Stacey Clarity back in, and also Brandon Villarreal, who will be calling us from Texas. We're going to talk a little huddle pass and what Purdue from a schematic standpoint is doing well, and maybe what it's not doing as well in our last segment of Gold and Black Live.
Purdue students, find your home away from home with Basham Rentals. Trusted for 3 generations to provide quality student housing. We are now leasing for next year, so call us to learn about our apartments and townhomes, all located at the edge of campus. We're eager to share information on our many units, supported by 24-hour maintenance. Basham Rentals. Call us at 743-8367 or look for us online at mybashamrentals.com or boilerapartments.com. Going to the Purdue game? Stay at Hilton Garden Inn, West Lafayette at the Wabash Landing. Your family will love the well-appointed guest rooms, the pool, whirlpool, fitness center, the breakfast buffet, and the amazing Hilton Garden Inn staff. Located just 4 blocks from Purdue University, Hilton Garden Inn has long been the choice for Purdue fans. Call today for a reservation and make Hilton Garden Inn your #1 choice.
More than the players on the field. More than coaches on the sidelines. More than the fans in the stands. More than just scores at the end of the night. It's the action, the stories, the heroes. It's the Friday Night Frenzy. It's the Friday Night Frenzy, and it's only on News 18. High school football from where you live.
We're wired up and ready to go. Segment 3, Kyle and Stacy. Chad Evans walking in, not walking in front, which is a good thing. Chad, we're going to have we're going to have a little windy weather tomorrow, but windy and relatively warm, so that's a good thing. And for Purdue football, Ross 8 Stadium tomorrow against the Iowa Hawkeyes. Brandon Villarreal, are you there?
I am here.
And I'm not hearing him very well, but I'm
there.
I'm hearing you. Are you hearing him?
I heard.
I'm here.
Okay, good. We're glad to have you here, and I'm gonna trust you there, and maybe it's just my bad right ear. Who knows? But you sounded better that time around. Brandon, obviously your day job in the wonderful world of education and coaching, and thanks for taking the time to join us. But your passion also not only is kids, but obviously HuddlePass.com and your weekly analysis on Purdue football, and obviously it's not been a very happy time for the Boilermakers here the last 6 weeks.
No, it certainly hasn't, but it's definitely been something that has really opened my eyes to the things that the program is really going to need to move forward to be successful. And I think that being in coaching these last 5 years has certainly helped me see that. I've been on that side of things. My senior year there at Purdue, we hit a 6-game slide in the middle of the season that put us out of bowl eligibility. So I know exactly what they're going through right now. And I can see it through different eyes, and I think I can see a little bit more of the optimism in it, even though there's a lot of people who may not be able to. But yes, it is a tough time, to say the least.
You know, you look at this and analyzing last week's game, obviously a 56-0. It was almost, it was off the charts in terms of a one-sided football game. You're dealing with a lot of young guys. It's a common theme we talk about here, and in your analysis of the game, you looked in the secondary, you look at some of the little things that are going on, being able to find the tight end being a good thing, and Purdue will need to do that again this week. But what gives you some optimism that some things are changing, maybe those small things that are going on with the scheme on this football team?
Sure. Well, as far as secondary is concerned, this goes with defense in general. Communication is key. I know I've coached in a couple of different types of defenses, and I know that the secondary all has to be on the same page. A lot of times the front seven can be kind of, for lack of better terms, divorced from what the secondary is doing from a coverage standpoint, unless they're a linebacker. But what it comes down to is communication. And whether you're a senior or redshirt freshman, everybody needs to be on the same page. So if a coverage is called, it needs to be echoed from one sideline to the other and back. That way everybody's on the same page, and we know that if everybody screws up, at least we're all doing the same thing, and that way that we can move forward and hopefully have some success on the play. And as far as youth is concerned, I love the fact that we do have some young guys playing. I remember when I stepped in as a redshirt freshman, I was kind of a off the bench guy. I was the first person to be brought in on the D line for a little while there, and there's definitely a learning curve that has to take place. And I think with the new system, and if it's your first or maybe second year to play, it can be tough to make that adjustment already as it is without having a new scheme to learn as well. So there's a number of factors that play into this, and I think now after having one season to get through this issue of a new coordinator and a new scheme, I think that on both sides of the football, we can definitely take steps in the right direction with the youth obviously getting stronger, faster, bigger, and knowing it a lot better. It'll flow a lot more smoothly, I should say, come next season.
Brandon, Purdue, as you know, moved to that three-man front a few weeks ago. Just what are some of the advantages of playing with 3 down linemen primarily?
It allows you to drop 8 into coverage first and foremost. If you can recruit the type of guy that you need for a traditional 3-4, you can have a good space eater in the middle, which I think Bruce Gaston can be for the team right now, where he can take up both A gaps. And if you can get good defensive ends with good size as well who can run, that are maybe 6'4", 6'5" guys that maybe 240, 250 that can get around the edge and rush the quarterback, it poses issues for the offensive line because they're going to be a little more athletic than those guys, and dropping 8 into coverage then allows the pass rush to get there, and it works kind of hand in hand. With a good rush, it allows the secondary to not have to cover quite as long, and then if they do have to cover a little bit longer, we get a cover sack and allow the defensive line to do something in the backfield. So first and foremost, having 3 down definitely allows them to get to the quarterback in passing situations because it slows the quarterback down a little bit. He has more people to have to read.
Brandon, what have you thought of those 3 young defensive linemen who've been playing, the pretty significantly. I think we're going to continue to see their snaps go up and up with Pansel, Replogle, and Howard.
Sure. I love what I'm seeing, to be honest with you. It comes back to the growing pains that you have as a young player in college football. And you step into the Big Ten, regardless if you're at the bottom of the conference or if you're at the top, you got to learn pretty quickly. And I know that we've got great athletes in place. Sometimes it's just a confidence issue. When your team isn't doing so hot, that can kind of be put on the back burner a little bit because you're just worried about not screwing up and making things worse as opposed to just pinning your ears back and going out and playing. So I like what I'm seeing from them. There are some technique issues, some fundamental things that come with time and with age. So I'm definitely optimistic for the future, but I like seeing what I have at this point. I hope they continue to get more snaps.
You know, you look, Brandon, and you went through that streak in your senior year. You were a senior, and and a very different situation. What, you know, Purdue's playing a lot of young guys, and in 2005, I know that there was some of that movement toward the end of the year, especially with Curtis Painter getting the opportunity at quarterback at the end of that season. But what did you try to tell your young guys, and what should the older guys that be trying to work with the young guys to keep that confidence level as best as possible?
Sure. I think for the young guys, the two things I tried to do, and I did this regardless if we were successful or not, was to continue to try to be a teacher to them, because we can learn not only from our coaches, but we learn from each other. I mean, our coaches know so much information, and they put a lot of stuff on paper. They do a lot of film study, and a lot of them, most of them, were players themselves. But what you're going through on a day-to-day basis, what you're seeing during a game is a completely different vantage point from what the coaches are getting. So I always try to do my best to make sure the young guys, young players, that I was teaching them the things that I was seeing and the kinds of things that I utilized to be successful. I know Ryan Baker was a younger guy when I was there, and I remember he always questioned things, and it wasn't in a bad way. He wanted to know how to do things, and I loved that about him. He wanted to learn, so I wanted to teach him because it made no difference if I knew if I knew what I was doing. I needed to make sure that my teammates knew what they were doing. So I think with the young guys, the seniors can do a good job of teaching and making sure that the young guys understand what's going on. And then the other thing I tried to convey to them was that the feeling that I was having as a senior going through a losing season was probably one of the worst feelings I'd ever had to that point. And that imagine how they felt as underclassmen and how they didn't want that to happen to them as seniors when they had no other shot to do it again in college. So just communicating my feelings and how things were going for me as a senior, as well as trying to teach those guys to get them ready to go for that next couple of seasons. Hopefully they could have some success after that.
Brandon, if I recall, you played like every snap, your junior or senior year, one of those. I guess my question is, could you do that now?
Well, I would love to, and I got to be honest with you, coaching is definitely my way. It's my way to kind of harness that energy. I'm so fired up before games. I almost feel like I'm going to pass out before games sometimes because I get so pumped up. So I'd probably be able to get in for about 2 or 3 plays. I'll be tapping my helmet to get somebody else out, but. That's definitely one thing I used to pride myself on, was being in good shape. And I wasn't always the biggest, fastest, and strongest, but I was a good technician. I had good conditioning. I'd like to say if I had about 3 or 4 months to train, maybe I could, but at this moment, probably not.
When you look at what Iowa does, they're probably pretty similar to when you played against them when you were here, but one thing that I guess they're doing a little bit differently now is on third down, changing things up a little bit on the defensive side of the ball, where they're kind of having guys stand, whether it's a lineman or a linebacker, just stand on the line. Obviously, you're on the defensive side of that looking at it, but what kind of challenges can that kind of a look present for offenses, do you think?
Well, I know that with offensive line, you can't be, for lack of better terms again, you can't be an ignorant person. You've got to be smart. You've got to be able to sort things out. I've always been the first to say that even though I am one, I think the defensive lineman can be the dumbest on the field, but offensive lineman, you can be. You have to be smart. You have to know what's going on. But when they're studying film, offensive linemen are looking for alignments, and a lot of their rules are based on where somebody's aligned. If somebody moves or shifts during a play, it can completely screw up the blocking scheme, or at least it can jumble them. If it's done within a half second of the snap, and they're supposed to be blocking a certain way, and somebody moves, it freaks them out for a second, and sometimes that can cause issues. A hole in the protection for pass. Maybe somebody slips through and gets a TFL on a run. And by putting a linebacker down on the line of scrimmage, standing there, or maybe multiple ones, and having them move around, it makes them think, okay, where exactly is he going? I can't solidify my rule on where I'm supposed to be pass protecting. I don't know if he's shooting this gap or the other gap. So it creates a little bit of it makes them uneasy a little bit, and there's some confusion to it. I know where I coach right now, we have a little package we call Bills, and what that does is it puts our entire defensive line and our linebackers just moving around. And it almost looks like scrambled eggs, is what somebody said. It's just kind of moving around and sizzling, and on the snap of the ball, we're going. We know where we're supposed to go, but the offense doesn't.
Right.
So when the ball snaps, they have to react at a moment's notice instead of having an idea prior to the snap on where they're supposed to go. So that causes issues for them.
Take us through a little bit about what you're doing now, obviously, and who you're coaching, and and then I also want to talk a little bit about Huddle Pass and how fans can be engaged. It's on our site every Monday or early Tuesday, your analysis, or look at one aspect of the game from the week before. But take us through a couple of those two things.
Yeah, sure. Well, currently I'm in Lucas, Texas. It's just a city just east of where I grew up in Allen. At a 4A school called Lovejoy High School. I've been coaching varsity defensive line here for the last, now this is my 5th year, and teaching business education courses. And so that's kind of what I do as my day job, so to speak. And obviously I love what I do because it keeps me around football. I did work a day job in the corporate world for about 2 years, and every day about 2:30 when Coach Tiller used to have us practice, I got an itch, get up and kind of move around. And I was around the water cooler getting drinks of water, and my boss, I was like, why don't you get back to your desk? Like, I can't do it. It's somebody won't let me start sweating. So, so that's what I've been doing to this point. And with Huddle Pass, I was actually approached about it from a guy that used to play at Illinois. He played safety. He was a backup safety there. His name was Kyle Kleckner. And I met him at one of Steve Weatherford's camps, who's the punter now for the Giants. And we met a couple years ago, and we just started talking football and coaching. And fast forward 2 years to this past May, and he said a couple of guys from Northwestern were coming up with a really cool idea to interact with fans and help teach the game of football. And I was immediately on board. Coaching and teaching is definitely, it's broadened my knowledge of football, and being able to teach that is something I have a passion for, and I was all in with that. So they told me about it, like I said, back in May. And since then, we've kind of taken off. We've added more huddles than just the Big Ten. We're opening up to all the major conferences. We've got some major BCS contenders in there. And, each week providing analysis is something that's fun for me. It's definitely hard to do it on a time frame of get it done on Monday or Tuesday because I'm in the film room on Saturdays and Sundays getting stuff done for our team. But my wife usually wakes up about 2 o'clock in the morning to see me on the computer writing stuff. So, but it's definitely been a lot of fun. I love analyzing the games. It keeps me involved with Purdue football. Being a coach has not really allowed me the time to get up there and see games. And obviously being down in Texas, it's hard to get some of them, but the Big Ten Network has helped that. And now that I have the DVR games to watch them, even though I may not necessarily want to if I hear they're getting blown out 34-0 at the half, it allows me that opportunity to see them. And I think that it keeps me more involved, and I love that. I love college football. If there's one thing I miss about the game of football, it wasn't high school, it wasn't being in the NFL, was playing college football, and there's something about school pride. So it's definitely allowed me to stay involved with the program, and I've developed a little bit of a relationship with Coach Hazel over the summer, and he loves the idea of Huddle Pass, and it's really taken off. We really do enjoy it. It's a lot of fun.
One last question as we wind down the show for today. You talk about those great players from the state of Texas, and obviously Darrell Hazel is recruiting everywhere, and he's going to want to focus it, as he calls it, the state of Purdue and the contiguous states, really to Indiana, with one exception, Pennsylvania, I guess. But talk about Texas football, and it's been good to Purdue over the years, obviously with the Brandon Villarreals and a guy named Drew Brees and some others. But talk about that and from your perspective of what kind of quality of high school football you're seeing down there.
Sure. Well, and I hope it doesn't sound arrogant when I say the great state of Texas. So that's just obviously a state pride thing that we have here. And I think that there's great football played all across the country, and obviously there's athletes that come from every state possible. Not every roster is filled with Texas players. But what I can say is that I really do feel that the coaching here in the state of Texas is on a different level. I've had friends and guys that I played with at Purdue, actually. Neil Toll, who was a couple years younger than I was actually coaching down in Florida a few years ago, and said the athletes are unbelievable, but the schemes down there were a little different. They just had a lot more athletes who just could make plays by giving them the ball. Well, there's a lot more involved with that here in Texas. Guys go to coaching school every summer where there's a week-long seminars that go on about ways to implement new schemes and programs that can help your team with speed and strength and conditioning. I mean, it's a way of life here. You know, we can play football from, I don't know, February through, you know, November. I mean, it's warm enough here to play all year round, and it's actually getting to the point where, you know, kind of like AAU does basketball, there's select football down here that they go in the spring and they go in the fall. And that starts at a really early age, and I think that the coaching is something that has taken that to that next level. There's a lot of younger teams that have coaches that go and see high school coaches. Coaches are taking trips to major universities to go learn schemes that help install them, and the amount of time that we put into it is different. I think that the major difference is the coaching in the state of Texas. A lot of people like to come here because it is a way of life, and they can devote that time to it, even though you do have to teach to be a coach unless you're a head coach. That's the major difference I'm seeing. Obviously here in Texas, the big thing that we have here is size. You know, there's probably some states that have a little bit more speed than we do, but if you want good size linemen, good safeties, quarterbacks with good height and good arms, and the 7-on-7 that we play here, Texas is the place to go.
All right, Brandon, we're going to let you get back to your coaching job. You have a game tonight?
We sure do, and our back's against the wall. We have to win this one to get in the playoffs. If not, we'll be home.
All right, well, then we appreciate you taking the time to join us, and we'll look for more of your submissions, and also of, it's not just Brandon Villarreal, it's Joey Elliott, it's Brandon Kearse, it's Charles Davis, it's Stu Schweigert, it's on down the line there, Chris Carlino, others that have joined the Huddle Pass at Purdue, and then we'll be looking forward to watching and reading their views on Purdue sports from and Purdue football on down the road. All right, Brandon, thanks again. We want to thank Stacy and Kyle for, again, as I always say, none of us have a choice. We're always here between 2 and 3 o'clock, and that's a good thing. And also, obviously, Allie and Kim and Gordon with the folks at WLFI. If you missed part of this show, we'll archive the segment. We'll have it up around dinner time, and we will look forward also to next week, same time, 2 o'clock, Golden Black Live. And thank you again also to our sponsors, Hilton Garden Inn, State Farm agent Trent Johnson, John Basham and Basham Rentals, and of course Triple X and all the folks that have been supporting us over the years. We'll look forward to seeing you next week, 2 o'clock on Golden Black Live.